got 20 seconds. Come on, Amanda, go.
Keep moving. Good. Get those knees up. Explode. Good. Explode. Let's go. Up.
Drive forward. Let's go. One more. Go.
You are listening to the Fight Strength Podcast with your hosts, Phil Daru and Jason Burgos.
Hello, and thanks for tuning in to a new episode of the Fight Strength Podcast. It is I, in-house journalist and contributing editor for MMAsucker.com, Jason Burgos, and with me, as always, is the globe-trotting strength and conditioning man of mystery of American Top Team, the one and only Phil Daru. Phil, what is going on? Good evening, good afternoon, and good night. How are you?
What's going on? Now, let me ask you a question. How long does it take you to come up with these intros? Because
I mean, the first sentence or two is pretty easy. I don't know, a good 3 to 4 minutes. You're just trying to keep it fresh. It doesn't take too long.
The ultimate hype man for me.
I try. I mean, I have some promotional gifts in me. Maybe, someone can help me out one day.
I hear you. I think I'll need that coming up.
So what's going on with you, man? Tell us about life. Tell us. I mean, what's going on in the world of Daru? What are the plot schemes, things going on? You are an international man of mystery. What's on the horizon?
The hectic world of Daru Strong Enterprises. Mm-hmm. Let's tell you. Okay, not enterprises though. We're not that big. That big. But what I do have going on, actually, we have a shit ton of seminars coming up this next coming year, 2018. 2018, right? Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, this is how bad it is.
No, 2016.
Yeah, when you don't know, I mean, it don't matter about the days. My days, I don't even know if it's Tuesday or Saturday sometimes. It just really depends on what I'm lifting. If I'm doing squats, I know it's a Saturday. But sometimes I do more frequency. So now I'm all fucked up because I do squats on Saturday and squats on Thursday. So I'm tripping. I don't know what's going on.
I totally know. I mean, my big muscle lifting days went the weekends for sure. I totally get you, man. Yeah.
You got pizza lifting day and you got donut lifting day.
I mean, when you get those all meat lover one, they're pretty hefty. They got some weight on them.
Yeah, for sure, man. I know, I understand. Not really at all. My nutrition is on point, and we're going to talk about nutrition coming with our guests. Mm-hmm. But so basically, what I have is January. We're going to be talking about. We'll talk about that later with Chris and Corey Peacock. But in April, I also have a combination, a meeting of minds, I should say, with PJ Nestler and Dan Gardner. We'll be doing a seminar in California. Most likely it's going to be Southern California, Orange County. If you have any interest in joining this combination of combat sport strength coaches, come check us out. It is engineering combat sports, or actually hold on, let me find that. You know how my memory sucks. So engineering combat athlete.
Not a good seminar. Selling point for the seminar, but continue.
Shut up. Anyway, engineering combat athlete is what it's called, and we'll be doing that in California in April. So if you have any interest in that, make sure you DM me on Instagram, or you can email me, phil@darustrong.com. It's going to be great. We'll be talking about periodization, programming for combat sports. Also, PJ is going to be doing some speed and agility training and exercise selection. And then also with Dan, we'll be doing some nutrition, sports nutrition for combat athletes as well. So that's a good one. And then obviously I'm going back to Chechnya in March, June and May. I'm in Poland. Mm-hmm. And from there, I'm looking to go to London too. So if anybody in London wants me to come out there and teach, I'm ready to go. Why you snickering over there? Huh?
Because, it's like, it's like business, but if you're willing to bring me out there for a good old vacation, I'd like to go to London too.
I'll take a weekend.
I'm sorry you brought up Sweden. Let's get Sweden in there. What's going on with that? Let's get some Switzerland.
Hey, listen, so we'll talk about Sweden, talk about my Scandinavian brothers and sisters.
How about Japan? I want to go to Japan. I'll go with you on that one. Let's go. Get Japan. Can we get Japan involved here?
I can probably make that happen. Japan, I have Kyoji, so Kyoji Hiraguchi.
There you go. I mean, now the the one with PJ and Dan, that's actually pretty amazing. So if anybody's interested, you're getting like 3 of the high level, like top of the game strength and conditioning coach who work with some of the top best fighters in the sport. I mean, are there any plan, like is it a location, time, anything like that set, or that's still a ways off before you get those final details?
So we're looking at, I think it's April 26th or something like that, around there. End of April is definitely going to be the date, on a Saturday. But we are looking for venues, either MMA gyms or strength and conditioning gyms. If you have any interest in hosting us there, like I said, just hit us up. You can hit PJ, me, or Dan up. Just let us know if you have any room. We're trying to get, a good showing out there. So it'll definitely be a good opportunity for the gyms to get us out there and actually teach combat sport related strength and conditioning, because right now I think there's a lot of misconceptions, and this is why we do our podcast, but for the all of our our expertise on top of real world application that we have and just working with fighters on a daily basis, I think this is going to be a good thing for all, either coaches or fighters or just people that want to learn about MMA strength and conditioning in general.
Yeah, for real. I mean, get on that, man. That's high level knowledge. I mean, speaking of high level knowledge, this week as we get closer to closing out the year, we are excited to finally get on a fighter that is not a part of the MMA game for the first time. We finally will be bringing on our first boxer to the show, and is a very notable one at that. This week we'll have a multi-time combat sports champ, because he's been champions in different sports, and that is fellow New Yorker, Chris Algieri. But of course, before we get to Chris, that's going to be a little bit later in the show. That's not all we have. Also in previous episodes of the show with our MMA guys, because we love them too. The guys like Tyron Woodley, Dustin Poirier, Valerie Letourneau, who looked very impressive this weekend in her Bellator debut, Tisha Torres, who's looking lined up for a title shot, and Colby Covington, who's a madman. And I'm writing an article about him right now. Look out for that. And all of those episodes you can actually find on our streaming page for iTunes, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Google Play Music, YouTube, and we are now also on Spotify, which is pretty cool. So the Fight Strength podcast, the movement of world domination, continues onto Spotify. Now, moving on to our traditional weekly Ask the Roo segment, we have a couple of questions that are they've got some depth to them. They got a lot of meat on them. There's no fat. It's a lean meat. Lot of info for these questions. Now, the first one is from the Jake Man on Instagram. Now, he asks a lot of things. Let's go through it real quick. This question. Now, he says, looking for some clarification on training, anti-rotation, and rotation qualities in fighters specifically. Are these two qualities directly related? I understand the descriptive components leads you to believe this, but does anti-rotation training lead you to producing more of a snap at the end of your strike? Whereas anti-rotation training results more in proximal stability, affecting resistive qualities, i.e. not being turned on the clinch or takedown from a shot, etc., etc. Do both need to be trained simultaneously to create knockout power? Before you get going, there's even more to this. Could you just explain for people like myself or people that may not know what is anti-rotation and regular rotation? What are those?
Yes, this is a thick question, so I'm going to go ahead and take my time with this one. But anti-rotation is a form of core strengthening with an isometric component of the obliques and the serratus muscles. The desired stimulus is to maximize proximal stabilization. And maximizing proximal stabilization, because I think Jason was over there coughing up a hairball.
Yeah, I'm good.
Rotational strength is basically anything that moves in the transverse plane to help initiate force in the obliques and the muscles of the lumbar spine. So that's a little bit of a rundown of what those two are. Now, let me just
do you want
start
me to
off
go
by
back
saying,
and read it again? Because it's a mouthful. It's a lot.
You can do that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Clarification on anti-rotation, rotation qualities in fighters specifically. But let's start with the first one. Are these two qualities directly related?
Okay, so this question can be identified by the stimulus you're trying to acquire. Now, it's maximum force output and velocity on the end of the strike, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to, obviously get faster on your strikes, things like that, yes, maximizing those rotational explosive power movements are going to be key, which I'll then go back to that proximal stability in association with that distal mobility. So making sure your core is nice and stiffened, getting proper IAP, intra-abdominal pressurization, and making sure that you are obviously stable in your core. Now, when working in conjunction of anti-rotation and core rotational strength, they go hand in hand pretty much. With the ability to promote greater motor units with anti-rotation isometrics and the rate of force development with the rotational explosive power movements, this is a key component in overall performance, especially in combat sports, pretty much. And as far as like implementation, things like that, usually I stick with more isometrics and strengthening, overall strengthening in any exercise in phase 1 of our developmental stage, to develop the strength which can then potentiate into that explosive component of the rotational power in phase 2, where we be more focused on taking that strength that we acquired in phase 1 and then turning it over into explosive power in phase 2. But that does not mean that I don't do any type of anti-rotation core exercises for, let's say, some accessory work or something along the lines of that. So if I see a fighter that has problems with getting swept or anything like that from a sport specific standpoint, then yeah, we will be focusing more on anti-rotation so they do not get swept in jiu-jitsu, or they don't get turned around or outworked in grappling situations.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Kind of answers his next question, because he was asking, do both need to be trained simultaneously to create knockout power? So I'm guessing they don't need to both be trained simultaneously.
Yeah. No, I mean, it would be good to phase it out, but like I said, when you're talking about core stabilization, talking about core strength in general, that can be trained year round. You want to have that trained year round. It has the ability to be trained with high frequency, because they are, a lot of times, your core, your calves, things like that, that's primarily a slow twitch fiber type muscle. So you can train that more frequently, more often, and you can train it with higher volumes, which is really good, because that means that you're just going to be able to build more hypertrophy, more stabilization there. And then also, like I said, you can do it without getting super sore every day.
So, and I think he kind of answered that too. He asks, additionally, if both training properties are related, they must at some point steal from each other, correct? Or I'm guessing no, because if you don't have to do them, or you can do them different times, they're not really stealing from each other.
No, I mean, I wouldn't say they're stealing from each other. Yeah. If anything, they're helping initiate that stimulus response cohesively together, and they work congruent. So I don't see it being a big issue if you do try to train them both at the same time. I mean, sometimes I will throw in, let's say, for instance, if we're working in phase 2, we'll primarily do some rotational explosive power movements with the med ball. And then at the end of the workout, primarily for core exercises, it'll be more of an anti-rotation, something like a half kneeling chop and lift, or just a plank movement in general, or an oblique side plank, something like that. So it's not really like I think he's thinking too far into the literature, I think, and he needs to really focus on getting better from an overall perspective, because let's face it, in MMA in general, not just, and we're talking MMA, there has to be multiple things going on at once. Everything in MMA is so multifaceted that you have to work primarily throughout the entire compass of the sport itself. And that does require, in a fight, you're going to have to engage in grappling situations, and you're going to have to throw hooks and roundhouse kicks and things like that. So training it kind of concurrent would be almost optimal in my opinion.
And then he asks, finally, the last part, and I think this is a no. Lastly, are there any blocks of a fight camp where training these qualities may be detrimental?
No, I don't think in any block it's detrimental. I think that's a key component to performance in general. Just to stay safe, if anything, injury prevention, and obviously maximizing performance through explosive power and isometric strength. So no.
All right, the Jake man, I hope you got your answers. You got a big amount of knowledge bombs. You better share this episode. Put it on your Facebooks. You're welcome. I hope you liked it. That was quite a lot. Free info without free of charge. Pro bono from Phil DeRue. Emil Shreminsky on Instagram asks, I'm a 29-year-old physio and PT trainer from Poland. Oh, look at that. Look at the Poland already gathering the fan base in Poland. I'm a father of two and kind of hesitating on what path I should choose. I'm curious how to find a proper balance between private life and work. I think this is an excellent question for you. What do you think? How can there be a balance? What's the balance? Is the balance simply just having a good wife?
Man, that might be one of them. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah. Just having a companion that understands what you're trying to do and your goals and your vision is very, very vital in your in the way you can actually put your life together in general. But I'm not gonna say that I'm 100% accurate with what I do as far as finding time. I think a lot of it is for me, I'm such an extremist when it comes to this business that this, Jason, I'm always working, man.
Yep.
And right now I can give you I think the best thing you should do, and to answer his question pretty vaguely, is just that you need to schedule. You need to schedule out your time. You need to make sure that you're making sure that everything is on point with each and every day. With every hour, you should be, pretty much. And obviously a schedule isn't 100% accurate. Things are going to come up. Things will pop up that you have to kind of, put on the back burner and go ahead and do. But like for me today, This is my daily schedule. It's on a Sunday. We're Sunday. We're recording on Sunday. So today I had to go to my daughter's soccer game. Wow. Then I had to come back. I had to write
Did your team win?
It was a tie. It was a tie. It was soccer. It was a tie. They did all right. I'm not going. So with that being said, then I had to go out to lunch with the team.
Oh wow.
Then I had to go back and finish 3 templates that I'm writing. And that is, and also let me go ahead and plug that template. I'm doing a 8-week conjugate MMA strength and conditioning program. If you want to coming out this week. So I'm writing that, finishing that up. And then right now I had to do a conference call with PJ Nestler. And then I had to do this right here, it's a podcast. And now after this, I'll be doing my own training because I have a meet coming up in February. So I had to make sure that I fit in time with my family on a Sunday, of course.
Yeah.
So, it's all about scheduling. It's all about knowing what you're going to be doing on a daily basis. And like I said, and anybody that knows me knows that I'm not 100%, on point with that all the time. But most of the time I am almost there, so you have to find time for your family. You have to find time for friends and things like that, but also make sure that you're getting your work done. And I think that also just not being, just not putting things off, and trying to utilize your time efficiently every day, every hour, and maximize, the time that you have. Because if you don't, then obviously, things will get misplaced and then you'll be forgetting things and stuff like that. So I don't know. Like I said, it's a work in progress for me too as well. But if I could say anything, it would be scheduling out your time for your family, for your friends, for your work, and for your own, progression. So that's about it.
And also, Emil, don't feel disheartened. Phil DeRue's schedule is rather ridiculous. I don't think this schedule for all people. He's pushing it. He has these huge plans and goals. He's trying to make that cash big. So, everybody can manage. This is a problem a lot of people have. They have the work career life and the family life, and they have to manage it. And it can be done. It can be done. There's going to be sacrifice on both ends, and you can do it. If Phil DeRue can do it with his schedule, then you can do it too. Take solace in that. He also has one more question. What's important to focus on to be successful in this industry? Another good question.
To be successful is constant improvement. I think that you need to learn on a daily basis. I'm always finding time to make sure I'm doing some sort of self-improvement. And we talked about this in the past. It's always trying to, get better. And that could be from knowledge that you're trying to gain. It could be from, just working out. It could be, anything that's going to get you better in your realm of practice is going to be key. And I would do this on a constant daily basis. It shouldn't be something that's, here and there. It should be every day. I think that will help in general. Also making sure that you are networking, getting with people that, that are like-minded and have been there in situations that you want to be in. I think that that's also something that would be a key component to getting better and progressing in your career, whatever the career may be. Find somebody that's been there and done that and done it successfully and pick their brain. That's about it.
Fair enough. On to our guest. He is a man that is a multi-level ass kicker. He studied Kempo karate as a kid, eventually getting a second-degree black belt. He was an undefeated world champion kickboxer, and then he transitioned to boxing, where he has also a world champion and fought the likes of Amir Khan, Ruslan Pavidnikov, Manny Pacquiao, and most recently, rising superstar fighter Errol Spence Jr. So, a lot of big names. Of late, he has made a name of himself for doing some selective work, though, with New York boxers as a nutrition specialist, as he is a certified sports nutritionist with a master's in clinical nutrition. This is a man of many skills and diverse abilities, and maybe the best part, at least to me, is he's a fellow New Yorker, and he is a man very talented. He is Chris Algieri. Chris, thank you for coming on the show with us this week.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to it.
All right, so I'm beginning to feel like I'm getting outnumbered here by the New Yorkers.
I love it.
But I do like Chris. He's a good guy and he's very knowledgeable. But go ahead, Chris. Let the people know a bit more about you, your fight career, and also how you got started working on weight cuts and sports nutrition in general.
So, essentially, my interest and knowledge and my passion to pursue nutrition and sports performance was based on my own career. I was really late to the game as a boxer. I didn't have any amateur boxing experience. Made my first boxing match was literally my pro debut when I was 24 years old. So I felt that I needed to kind of make up some ground any way that I could. And for me, I thought the best way to kind of do that was to be more of an all-around athlete and to study my body and study nutrition and go about everything kind of with what my strong points were in school, which is science. So I took a scientific approach to my own training, and it worked out really well for myself, obviously, from that intro. But I also have a passion for helping others and sharing my knowledge and experience. So that's really where my performance nutrition interest came from.
And we do share some sort of a similar background. I did do Kempo karate too. Started when I was 4 years old until I started playing football full time around like 11. So we could chop it up a little bit about that. I don't think I want to take him on in any type of Kempo karate. But on to the next question though. In your opinion, where would you like your fighters to walk around at the start of fight camp? And or I guess I should say, what would be an ideal body fat percentage going into that weight cut?
Okay, talking about where they start at, I'm gonna say that's gonna depend on which sport I'm dealing with. If it's gonna be a boxer, I like my guys to stay relatively closer to their fight weight than maybe some of my MMA guys. The sports are just very different. A 10 or a 12 round boxing match, you don't have as much room to cut as much weight, to pack on as much water weight between the weigh-in and the fight. The carryover is not as good as say an MMA athlete who has kind of a little more time and can use that extra body size because of the wrestling and the grappling and so on and so forth. But I would say, my boxers, I don't like my guys to get too much more than 15 to 20 pounds over, depending on the weight class. MMA I could do a little bit more, but I'd like to keep my guys pretty lean in between fights. And the more that an athlete works with me throughout, our camps together, they generally tend to stay leaner in between fights because they learn during the camp how to actually eat and feel their body. And there's a lot of carryover for them to do on their own, even when we're not working together.
You have a serious combat sports history, like I mentioned before. You like the Kempo karate. You also were also a high level wrestler in high school, and then transitioned to being a champion kickboxer. And I'm fascinated that you mentioned that you are also working with MMA fighters with nutrition. But your resume really checks off in many key requirements to become a pretty damn good MMA fighter. Do you ever ponder going back, in 2007, 2008, when you originally went to boxing and made that transition? Did you ever ponder maybe going into MMA at that point?
No, not at all. It was never something that was kind of on my horizon, something that I was thinking about. My passion was always in boxing. I grew up watching boxing with my Argentinian grandfather. And for me, his heroes were boxers, and he was my hero. So for me to look beyond that and just kind of be like, those are the guys I want to be like, was really where my passion came from. And for me growing up, I watched boxing. There was no UFC or MMA when I was a kid. So really, my boxing passion comes all the way from my childhood. It's the first sport I ever remember watching. So for me to be able to fight at the highest level of boxing is an absolute dream come true.
I mean, it would an interested promoter that is listening to would anybody be able to talk you into an MMA fight maybe once? Because you're still in prime years, you have all these skills. It would be interesting for you to actually have noted a professional in 3 different professional sports. Could anybody talk you into that, or just no interest at all?
No, I really don't have an interest. I would consider professional kickboxing again, though. I've always said that after my boxing career, I want to go back and have at least a couple kickboxing fights. I love the sport. I think kickboxing is one of the most entertaining combat sports out there. You got guys that are such high level and with their strikes, but you get to add those kicks in there too. So I definitely miss that a little bit.
All right, so I know Jason. He just wants he wants to see you in the cage, man. He just wants to see you.
Pretty much. Bellator, let's do
it. and he's against the UFC for some reason. I've been noticing this.
No, I just like competition. Nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong with that at all.
I'm gonna get Chris. Me and Corey are gonna get Chris in a gi, and we'll have him rolling around pretty soon. Don't worry.
Nice.
We'll make it happen.
Dude, I used to love wrestling, man. Like I said, I was a high-level wrestler in high school. I actually thought about wrestling in college a little bit, but decided to go with the professional kickboxing route. Wrestling, I would definitely get back into. I've always said that I've wanted to get into some more groundwork, doing jiu-jitsu, doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I just haven't because there's so many injuries involved, and that would keep me out of the boxing ring, out of my boxing training. So that's something I've definitely looked forward to.
Yeah, there's so much fucking ringworm too involved as well. You don't want that either.
A lot of the shit on those mats, man.
All right, getting back to the nutritional questions, because let's face it, that's what everybody really wants to hear. How important, and this can be general, how important is calculating calories and overall macronutrients while working with fighters in camp?
Really important, actually. I'm not really a calorie counter guy, but I think for guys in camp, it's really important to understand how much an athlete is burning and what their needs are in order for whatever the phase of camp is and whatever their nutritional and strength goals may be. It's really easy to undereat in these sports because in general they're very catabolic sports. You're always breaking down. You're always trying to lose weight to get to your weight class. It's really difficult to make sure that these athletes are getting fueled enough, getting fueled properly, recovering in between their sessions. If you're not calorie counting or counting things at least every couple of days or at least once a week or whatever, as you're fixing up, as you're changing up the phases of camp and doing their nutrition along with that.
Yeah. Now I know we talked about this before. In our recent lunch meeting, now I'll talk about that we have something in the making, I should say, right?
Yeah.
Why wasn't I invited to this lunch meeting? I mean, come on now.
Don't worry. Because you're in New York, dummy.
Yeah, we couldn't be too many New Yorkers there either. It would have been. Yeah. We would have dominated the whole thing.
I wasn't outmatched in me, Corey Peacock, and then we had Chris there, so I was ready. Just in case. We had 2 Florida, 1 New Yorker this time.
See, you could have called me tag team New York and Florida. Damn, man. Leave it that would have messed up.
But Chris, so let me ask you this though. Now, do you do any type of any blood panels or anything like that? Do they get blood work done before you start implementing their program or their nutrition guidelines?
That depends on the level of athlete I'm working with and what their financial status is, if they want to do that. I do that with Daniel Jacobs going into camp, making sure that his bloods are in the right place. He's also a recovering cancer patient, so a cancer survivor rather. So making sure that his bloods and his white blood cell counts are in the right place is really important. Because like I said, the sport's so catabolic. A lot of times, if there's any kind of health or nutritional deficiencies, you can find out in the middle of camp, and you can wreck a good camp and may not even get to fight night. So I definitely think that's if that's available to you, that's a great tool to utilize, but it's not something that's realistic for all guys out there.
Sure. Now, supplementation can be very effective if used in the right ways, correct?
Absolutely.
Now, what would you prefer fighters use as far as supplementation for maximizing recovery and performance?
I think that the most researched and one of the best supplements out there is creatine monohydrate. Not only for its explosive repeats and sprintability and your body's ability to recover and to get more reps out, but also there's a lot of research about the neurological protection involved in creatine. So like that right there, we've got athletes that are taking head trauma day in and day out. If we can protect the brain in any way, shape, or form, I think that's totally vital. So I think creatine monohydrate is probably my favorite supplement out there for any kind of fighter. Next, I would say beta alanine would be, especially for a boxer, because it's such an endurance sport, and that's such an endurance supplement. I've used it myself. I've had really great success with it. I have trouble, honestly, getting my athletes to do it because there is the tingle involved with it, and for some guys it's very, very uncomfortable. And really, you don't see the benefits of the supplement until you're minimum 4 weeks of proper dosing. So it's difficult to get guys to hit that threshold in order to see some kind of difference. And at first, the change is actually pretty minor. So getting buy-in might be a little tough with that one too, when you got somebody tingling on their neck and face 3 times a day from taking 1.5 to 2 grams a day. So
gotcha.
Also think fish oils are definitely really important. Omega-3s, keeping the blood flowing properly, helping with any kind of injuries. I don't care whether you're boxing or MMA, your joints are under a tremendous amount of stress. So anything we can do to kind of keep that blood flowing, keep everything healing properly, keeping everybody inflammation at down, I think is really important.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that and creatine together are just like an unstoppable force, especially with performance. But I do like the study that actually Corey Peacock put me onto about the head trauma and with neural drive and capacity there as well. Because listen, I had my share of concussions. Let me just tell you that right now. Everybody knows that listens to my podcast. They know about my 8 concussions and how not right now I need all the help I can get. But what would you say an effective dosage would be for that creatine? 2.5, 5 grams, or something like that?
I say 2 to 3 grams, 2 to 3 times a day.
Gotcha.
So multiple dosages throughout the day is better than one bolus. So doing 5 to 10 grams once a day is not as effective as having 2 to 3 grams 2, 3, 4 times a day. Your body it saturates the muscle tissue better when you do it with those kind of intermittent dosings.
Nice. All right.
You've had your degree for a very long time. You got your bachelor's while you were kickboxing, and then your master's early in your boxing career. How much of your own input went into your diets and weight cutting programs during your boxing career? Like, were you your own nutrition specialist? Have you been that since your your entire boxing career?
Yeah, so I was both my own nutrition specialist and I was also my own experiment. I was always kind of figuring out what worked and what didn't. My mentor, Tony Ricci, who you guys have had on the show before,
yes.
That's my man. I've known him for a long time. And I literally, at the time, he was the health ambassador of Pfizer in Manhattan. I was going to the corporate offices 3 Wednesdays a month and spending the entire day with him. And that's really where I kind of figured out that how to be a sports nutritionist, how to deal with clients, how to conduct speaking engagements and do phone calls and do diet recalls and pretty much everything about what sports nutrition is about. And I also bounced a lot of ideas off of him from my own career. He didn't have a lot of experience with fight sports or boxers, so we kind of worked together to figure out what worked and what didn't. And we would speak constantly about, you know, what I was doing with my diet, supplementation. He's the one who put me on to beta alanine. He literally just came to me one day and was like, Chris, you need to get on this. You need to take this. It's, you know, the research is awesome. I'll send it to you. He's like, but just trust me. And I mean, my first fight camp using that, it was unbelievable. So, you know, you gotta have help from outside sources. But yeah, for the most part, I've been my own sports nutritionist for the past 15 years.
I mean, as much as I respect everything you've done in the ring and with your boxing and kickboxing, I really respect you have your degrees, you have your masters, and you got them early, and you have something to fall back on. You know, you've been a pro fighter a long time and clearly have years left, yet you have options after you retire. You know, for young fighters out there listening, could you speak on how important it is to still go out and get an education away from the sport and set your future up early? Because, you know, the window to make money in the fight game is very limited.
Absolutely. The thing I like to help kids who are studying or want to do something when it comes to getting a degree, the degrees never go away. Once you have them, they can't be stripped. You have it. So get it out of the way, get it done. If you never use it again, oh well, but at least you have something to fall back on. Hey, hopefully we all make it. We all make millions and millions of dollars. You don't have to work ever again. You can just kind of live off of your fight earnings. Yeah. But that's few and far between. So to make sure that you have something to fall back on, like you said, is really important. Get it done. You're always in a rush when you're first coming up. Like, I got to get this done. I got to get this next fight. I got to get my career going. I did the same thing, but, you know, for whatever reason, you know, my family really pushed education growing up. So I knew that I had to finish my degrees, before really pursuing my career, or at least doing it concurrently and kind of push my career back a little bit. My fight career, that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty interesting, man, because of the long road that you've had so far, and you're still in the game. And I asked you recently, like, are you still competing? And, you know, obviously you are now, which is awesome. It's commendable. And also just working with fighters. I know that you've had a couple of run-ins that you were working with a fighter, and then you had to do a weight cut for the same guy that he was fighting. I guess that was. Yeah. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Yeah.
So I'm very particular about who I work with in the sport. I actually started out with MMA guys. I was working with Ryan LaFleur is one of my longtime clients. Dennis Bermudez, John Vellante. I actually helped Chris Weidman with a weight cut early on in his career, because him and John are very close, and I was close with Vellante. And I kind of stayed out of boxing because I was a boxer, but I've gotten into dealing with more fighters now, more boxers. I've worked with Paulie Malignaggi, Daniel Jacobs, and then ended up that Daniel Jacobs was fighting another one of my clients, Luis Arias, in his last fight. And I was already 2 weeks in the camp with Jacobs, and we find out we're fighting Arias, and I was like, oh shit. So, you know, I've done this guy's weight for camps for his past 4 fights. So right away I called up Louis and I was like, hey buddy, man, I'm in camp with Jacobs. I didn't realize it was going to be you. I'm already here. Sorry, bro. I'm like, best of luck to you. Great opportunity. I'll see you on the other side. And he understood, you know, it's business. It is what it is. But you know, when you're at the highest level, I mean, the talent pool is so small. You're going to run across different, you know, the same guys over and over again. You're going to cross paths. You just got to, you know, treat it like it is. It's business.
Now, doing all those weight cuts and things like that, I know that you have a protocol. And what would be your ideal or go-to rehydration protocol for post weigh-ins?
So post weigh-in, you really got to focus on liquids and electrolytes. I think sodium is the most important electrolyte. At that point, you got to put the weight back on. I generally see guys put on, 8 to 10 pounds just in the liquid portion of the rehy. And that's in the first hour or so. So that's really where we'll focus on making sure that the electrolytes are getting back to the right level. Your sodium balance, your fluid balance is right. Because I've seen it go the other way too. I've seen guys where they really didn't focus too much on their electrolytes. They flush a ton of water through their body, and their body just doesn't hold it. They don't have the electrolytes to actually hold the fluid in their tissue, and they're just constantly flushing out, and they're not putting the weight back on. That's a very dangerous situation because you got an athlete who may seem like he's hydrated or is hydrating, but is at a cellular level is actually dehydrated. And when it comes to dehydration, being in a ring where you're getting hit in your head, it's extremely, extremely dangerous. Cerebral spinal fluid is fluid. That's what protects your brain from getting hit. So if you're in a dehydrated state, it's extremely, extremely dangerous. And then
that's perfect. That's perfect. Just keep going, Chris. Let them know.
And then beyond that, I really just have my guys eat normally. We treat our sparring sessions like fights. So I want my guys eating the day before what they're going to be eating, the night before a fight. They're going to eat prior to their big heavy sparring sessions, very similar to what I want them to have before they're on their fight day. What they would eat leading up to the fight. So I don't want anything new. I kind of want the body used to what's going in. The fuel, the fiber, the fluid, the protein content. I want that to be something that the body's used to come fight time. You don't want any surprises on fight day. And I've seen guys do that as well, where they eat foods they've never eaten all camp the day of the fight, just because they're trying to, pack on those extra pounds. It's not necessary to do that. We don't want to shock the body that much. I generally like to keep my guys, the bulk of their training, of their sparring rather, of their training camp, I want them to be the weight that they're going to be on fight night in the ring. Not their weigh-in weight, their weight they're going to be in the ring. If the guy's going to put on 10 pounds from the weigh-in to the fight, I want him to be plus 10 pounds in the middle of his training camp when he's doing the majority of his, or the bulk of his sparring. Because that's the body he's going to be on fight night. That's the body I want him to feel comfortable in, because that's the body that's going to be in the ring. 5 pounds is a big difference in at this level. Being 5 pounds heavier or 5 pounds lighter can greatly affect an athlete's ability to be quick, to their gas tank, how they react, how their body moves. So I want to make sure that their bodies are used to where they're at.
I like that you mentioned that you experimented on yourself. Were there any times when you were going through the process of being your own nutritionist and doing things like weight cut, like any nightmare scenarios in trying to learn your own physiology and meshing it with the knowledge you had gained?
Absolutely. Oh man, I've the story of the guy who was hydrating and not using enough of the sodium was me. I couldn't hold the water. I wasn't putting on the weight that I needed to. I didn't have the foods available to me. And very unfortunately, the fight that happened was Manny Pacquiao when I was in China. I could not put the weight back on. It was difficult for me to get the foods that I was used to when we were out there. I thought that I prepared for that. I had ordered all this food that was very similar to what I was used to. It just wasn't the same, and I didn't foresee that. I just couldn't put weight on between that weigh-in and the fight. It sucked, but it happens. You live and you learn. I just want to make sure that doesn't happen to myself again or any of my other athletes.
No, I'm going to transition back to the boxing. I want to ask you some boxing questions. I'm a big boxing fan. I respect you highly, what you've done. You haven't fought since April 2016. Are there any plans to get back in the ring anytime soon?
Oh, absolutely. I've been in the gym. We're just trying to figure out the ugly side of the sport, which is the business side, before I get back in there. But no, I am fully prepared physically, mentally, psychologically to get back in. We're looking at the first quarter of 2018.
Can we get like a hint of possible opponents? Do you want to call somebody out here, maybe?
No, it's been so long. I need to really kind of get back going. These fight sports are so momentum based. You guys know that, dealing with MMA guys and other fighters. You gotta get some wins under your belt. I want to get back in the top 10, so I gotta get back out there. I'm essentially inactive at this point, so you gotta earn your keep, even if you've been champ before.
Now, I want to get an opinion from such a high level fighter. You know how to use your distance. You have a varied attack. You have great footwork. It's scary to say this, but for me, I feel like Vasyl Lomachenko may be like the greatest fighter I've ever seen, and he's done so much in a short amount of time. I mean, he has his amateur background is well documented, and what he's doing is just so impressive. Instead of knocking guys out, he's making them quit. And it's unbelievable. What are your thoughts on how talented he is and his abilities? It just seems uncanny for something like I've never seen it before.
A guy like him, I'm gonna compare him to like a young Roy Jones. He's doing things that other people can't do. He's not maybe the best we've ever seen, like you said. Like I think it's a little early to say that, and I don't think he is. From what I've seen already, but he's doing things that other people can't do. And Roy Jones Jr. was another guy who was like that. Roy was fast, he was explosive, he was strong, he had great reactions. So you see these kinds of guys, like you can't not watch them. They're so entertaining. Roy used to knock everyone out, and he's like, he's not fighting anybody. He's like, no, he's just making them look really bad because he's that damn good. And then you got Vasyl, who's making these real good fighters quit. So it's just super interesting to see guys like that. They don't come along that often. I think that he is one of those special kind of type guys, like a Roy Jones Jr. that can just do things that other people can't. And you don't see guys like that often. It's pretty amazing.
You've seen, we see fighters move into the promotional side of things, like Golden Boy. Have you ever pondered, thinking about going into fight promotion yourself?
No. I mean, I would promote my own fights. I wouldn't want to do it where I had other fighters to handle. If anything, I would go into the managerial side. I would like to help fighters in that sense, using my experience with the business side of the sport and kind of guiding them throughout that kind of minefield that is the business side. And I think also there's a lot to be said for talking to fighters about what to do with their money while they're earning, because you don't know when it's going to end. So it's really important to make sure that you're putting stuff in the right places. You have the right people around you. You have the right financial team taking care of what you have going around. Because I've seen that tons and tons of times. We've all heard about that too. So I think that's something that's really important and often overlooked on a team.
2017 was a fantastic year in boxing. I mean, we had Ward Kovalev 2, Triple G Canelo, like Lomachenko, like I mentioned. Even the circus that was Mayweather and McGregor, selling 4 million, getting 4 million pay-per-view buys. I mean, for a while, the UFC, MMA have really, made some headway in building popularity and coming up with boxing. What are your thoughts in terms of, do you feel like boxing's kind of maybe found itself after having a few missteps and it's really coming into its own again and really doing good things again?
I think boxing throughout its past and history has always had an ebb and flow of, being great and then also kind of getting a bad rap. And I think that's kind of been that way. After the 80s, we had all those great middleweights, the Roberto Durans, the Sugar Ray Leonards, the Thomas Hearns, the marvelous Marvin Hagler. And in the 90s, we had Mike Tyson, but we had the end of that era happen. Then we had the resurgence with Oscar De La Hoya, who was a crossover star, brought a lot of eyes to the sport. And then a little bit in the early 2000s, it kind of fell off a little bit. Floyd took the reins as the pound for pound best. But yeah, I think we're seeing a resurgence now, especially in pop culture. You're seeing more and more Hollywood movies that are coming out that are boxing based. You're seeing it now in even all these models are boxing for fitness. It's entering the fitness realm much more, being more accepted to train boxing or to have athletes. I mean, to have actors and regular people train boxing. Boxing gyms are popping up all over now. So that's I think there's definitely a resurgence. MMA has been they're skyrocketing over a very short period of time. It's been amazing how fast that company and that sport has grown. It's pretty amazing to see.
Now, we have before we wrap it up, we have a couple of listener questions and a nutrition geared. Now, I mean, you kind of answered this question, but I was just hoping you can reiterate it. This is from Jamie Morris Rowe on Instagram. He asks, what is the biggest change in nutrition between different fight disciplines? For example, how does nutrition change between boxing and kickboxing? Can you just give us those differences one more time?
With so between boxing and kickboxing or boxing and MMA?
What he's just asking, what are the differences in nutrition between all the different fight disciplines, like if there are any major differences?
Yeah, I would say that the metabolic output during training of an MMA fighter is going to be much, much higher. When you're adding in wrestling to sparring and then the conditioning work, I believe there's a lot more focus on strength conditioning in MMA because the conditioning aspect is probably greater. I think maybe the technical skill aspect of boxing is a little higher, so you spend a lot more time training technique and skills. MMA during camps, the metabolic output's crazy high. So making sure that the athlete's eating enough is going to be really important. Making sure they're recovering properly. So yeah, that's something that is definitely different. You're going to be eating way more calories, more carbs, more protein. You're going to be focused more on the recovery because your body's under so much stress from so many different places. Even just kicking, boxing and kickboxing, totally different. You're talking about banging shin bones against elbows and forearms and against your legs. The tissue turnover is going to be way higher for a kickboxer versus a boxer, where we're just using our hands. So you definitely got to be sport specific, even though even a kickboxing and boxing match, which look very similar from a metabolic output and from a nutritional standpoint, are going to be very different.
Now, the next question is from Pedro_J92 from Instagram. He has a few questions. I mean, the first one you kind of already answered, the first two really. It was, what is the ideal walking around weight for a fight? You said that you would like them to be on their weight class weight or within maybe 10 pounds, right?
Depending on what they're going to... So I look at it like this. For example, if I have maybe a middleweight, a guy who's like 160, and say he's going to be in the ring at about 172. I'd like him to stay under 175, and then we'll lose a couple pounds during the onset of camp. We'll spend the majority of the camp around 170, and then cut down to middleweight, and then by the time he fights in the ring, back up to 72, 73-ish. Of course, there's always going to be estimates. A couple pounds here and there is fine, but that gives you kind of a rough idea of where I'd like to see my guys from the start of camp, for the bulk of camp, and for the weigh-in.
Now, his other questions are more diet, eating related. They can kind of go together. He wants to know how many calories does a boxer need to consume daily, and what is their correct portion size for each meal?
That's going to be highly, highly variable depending on, one, the size, the weight class of the athlete, two, their output, because not everybody trains the same. Some guys train way harder than others. It depends on – the great thing about fight sports in general, boxing specifically, is that you don't have to be anything. You don't have to be strong. You don't have to be fast. You don't have to be like that type of fighter. Whatever works for you works. So some guys have to work a lot harder in terms of their metabolic output because maybe they don't have as much power, or they're a speed guy or whatever. It's like that completely changes how their training is going to look, and it's going to change what their nutrition is going to look like. So it's really difficult, pretty much impossible, to give just a basic outline of what the calorie needs for an athlete is going to be. And then also we got different weight class, different sizes. So my light heavyweight can't eat the same as my lightweight.
Phil, you've been very quiet over there as the New Yorkers talk to you. Is any more questions come to mind? You got any more stuff for Chris?
No, I do want to announce, though, that me, Chris, and Corey Peacock will be doing a seminar in mid-January.
Yep.
And in Florida. So if anybody wants to come on out and check out what we got to talk about, basically it's going to be about strength and conditioning for combat sports and nutrition. Obviously with Chris here, he knows a lot, obviously, as you can see. But if you're interested, go ahead and you can hit me up on Instagram. You can DM me or email, and we'll get all of the we haven't really figured out a true date on that yet, right, Chris?
No, we haven't. It's going to be sometime in mid to late January. Yeah. I'm super psyched about this. I think this is something Corey, Dr. Peacock, and I have been talking about for a while. But now to add in your experience with strength conditioning, geared specifically towards fight sports. We've got Corey, who's the exercise physiologist, you doing the strength conditioning, me doing the nutrition. It's really going to be an all-encompassing seminar that if you have any interest of what fight sport conditioning looks like, it's going to be worth checking out.
For sure. So I'll get more details on that.
Is there
soon.
Any chance of like an added gift for the seminar, like a Algieri Daru sparring, so someone can give Phil a 2-piece?
Listen. If I ever get into the ring with Chris, I'm shooting a double leg real quick. Not boxing. We're not boxing around.
My spar game is still good, bro.
Then I'm gonna pull guard on you real quick.
Okay. All right. Then I'm really out of my league. I got no jujitsu.
I mean, you got wrestling. There you go. That's something.
Oh yeah, I've trained MMA with a lot of the guys up here. Like I used to, because the wrestling doesn't go away. Andre Harrison, he fights in he's the champ of I think Elite FC. He's one of the smaller organizations. I've trained with him. Gregor Gillespie, who's in the UFC right now, he's undefeated. He's kicking ass. I've wrestled with him before up in Belmar Kickboxing on Long Island. So yeah, I jump in every once in a while at the MMA guys. Usually just to do striking, but every once in a while I'll jump in there and wrestle too. Just I don't know, just because I'm feeling snarky one day. I want to get in there.
If the right opportunity came, maybe the right number in terms of pay, or maybe just someone you hated so much had the opportunity to beat their ass in MMA, how long do you think you would need to properly prepare for an MMA fight?
Honestly, I'd have to speak to whoever my jiu-jitsu coach would be, because that would be the thing that would hold me back. Striking wise, I don't think it would take all that long. With punching and kicking, and even defending against wrestling. But the jiu-jitsu, like what I would need to learn in order to defend, put myself in better positions. That I don't take anything away from jiu-jitsu practitioners. What they do is an incredible art. And I think it would do a disservice to them to say that I could just jump in without it or learn it quickly. So I would have to say that I'd have to speak to whoever my jiu-jitsu coach would be.
All right, now, is there, for the people that are foolish enough and they're not following you yet on any of the social media, could you give the listeners, if you have the Instagram, the Snapchat, the Facebook, Twitter, maybe websites you want to promote, anything you want to promote so people can learn, and find out more about your nutrition abilities and learn maybe some tips or anything like that, if you're willing to give them up and just follow you for your next fight coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ChrisAlgieri.com has links to all my socials, so if you can spell my name, you can find me. All my handles are just my name. So Chris Algieri, Twitter, Chris Algieri on Instagram. But like I said, ChrisAlgieri.com is probably the easiest way to find all those handles.
Phil, your social, so you can get ready to start promoting Algieri Daru sparring session coming up soon.
Why does everybody want me to spar everybody?
He does this shit. He wants me to race him. Like I don't understand him. But I was in New York. It was no type of racing going on. He didn't want no type of running.
You didn't bring it up. I would have did it. You didn't bring it up. You look tired. You didn't get no sleep. Why am I going to do that to you?
Bro, are you ever going to be a promoter? You sound like you're ready to promote fights, man.
I should. I mean, you guys got connections. Get me into that. Let's go. You be my financial backers.
If I have a promotional company, man, I know who I'm hiring to be the hype man. That's gonna
Bam!
be
There you go. See, Phil, look at that. Unbelievable.
Maybe we can get Kobe Covington to go on your team too while we're at it.
Oh man, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Anyways, the social, give it to him.
Daru Strong, Daru Strong, is at Instagram, Twitter, my Facebook, Phil Daru, and then also my Snapchat. You can find all my videos there, Daru Strong 1. Also, my website is darustrong.com. And if you have any questions or want to do any type of virtual coaching or need any template programs, I'm coming out with a 8-week conjugate mixed martial arts program template that'll be out this week. So if you want to get on that, go ahead and email me, phil@darustrong.com. We can make that happen as well.
Also, I mean, years coming up to an end. I don't know if the voting stopped, but for anybody out there, contact Fighters Only Mag. Let them know Daru Strong for Trainer of the Year 2018. Let's get that going. Please, hashtag candidate Daru, vote for Daru. For me, you can follow me on Instagram at Jericho Vendetta, on Twitter, Cheap Seats Chat. Of course, don't forget to follow the show on Facebook, Fight Strength Podcast, and on Twitter at FightStrength_. Always, you can find all of our previous episodes, as I mentioned before, SoundCloud, Google Play, YouTube, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and now on Spotify. Chris Algieri, my New York brother, thank you so much for coming on the show this week. We really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely, guys. It was my pleasure and my honor. Thanks for having me. Good things coming in the future, man. Definitely keep checking us out.
I am Jason Burgos. He is the bearded wonder, Phil Daru. Phil, say bye-bye.
Peace.